Residents of Mississauga, my name is Peter Nagallo and I'm the Vice Chair of Policy for the Mississauga Board of Trade. The Mississauga Board of Trade and Rogers TV are pleased to be hosting federal elections candidates debates for various ridings in Mississauga for the benefit of the community. It's important for all of us as community members to be informed as to the issues and to hear firsthand from those who aspire to represent us. But come Election Day on October 19th, the responsibility falls on all of us, the citizens of Mississauga, to exercise our right to vote and to choose the candidate and party whom we feel will best represent the interest of our community. Let's take a moment to introduce each of the candidates for the riding of Mississauga-Erin Mills. I will say, however, this is a new riding, as essentially all of the ridings in Mississauga are new. They've been redistricted. So if you have any questions regarding that, please contact the candidates or Elections Canada's website. I'll start with Michelle Bilek from the NDP. Thank you. Hello. And Bob Dechert from the Conservative Party.
Good to be here.
And finally, Iqra Khalid from the Liberal Party of Canada.
Thank you.
Each of the candidates have been apprised of the rules of the debates, and they've all agreed upon them. Following opening remarks, the candidates will field questions from the in-studio panel, including myself, as well as Carol Kataka, the Vice President of Stakeholder Relations and Public Affairs of the United Way of Peel Region. I'd now like to invite our candidates to present their opening remarks. Ms. Bilek.
Hello, my name is Michelle Bilek and I'm your NDP candidate. I'm 42 years old and I'm a longtime citizen of Mississauga, first moving here in 1978. I have and continue to make significant contributions to our community. I do work in poverty reduction, food security, homelessness, and in diversity and equity throughout the Peel region. My experiences, contributions, passion and commitment, and leadership makes me a perfect representative for our community in Ottawa. This election is truly about change. We are working harder but falling further behind. Under Harper and the Conservatives, we find ourselves in a second recession. They have run 8 consecutive deficits. We have $150 billion added to our debt. 200,000 more Canadians are unemployed than before the last recession, and we've lost 400,000 manufacturing jobs. Unemployment is up, and growth is anemic at best. But this didn't just happen under Stephen Harper. The Liberals have had decades in government previously and have repeatedly failed to deliver on many of their promises. The NDP has a concrete, long-term, and sustainable plan and policies that will affect all Canadians. We'll create 1 million childcare spaces at $15 a day. We'll help our youth train for good jobs, kickstart manufacturing and clean energy economy while cutting taxes for small businesses. We'll partner with the provinces and cities to build better transit, affordable housing, and infrastructure. We'll improve long-term care and home care. We'll protect our environment for future generations and finally take action on climate change and pollution. The NDP will get us back on track. We'll give our children a better start in life, improve and diversify our economy, and ensure that all Canadians get equal access to programs and services to live healthy, productive, successful, and dignified lives. Tom Mulcair and the NDP have a vision for a better Canada. We also have a plan. This election, join me to make our country a country that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Dechert from the Conservative Party.
Well, thank you, Peter and Carol. Hello, friends. You know, as I campaign door to door in my riding, people often say, why should I vote Conservative? There is no difference between the major Canadian political parties. As your Member of Parliament, I can tell you that in this election, the voters in Mississauga have a very clear choice. Liberal leaders like Justin Trudeau and Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne have a separate agenda for children and their families, a radical agenda which caters to special interest groups and includes legalizing marijuana and prostitution. As Conservatives, we take a completely different approach. We believe that marijuana should not be legalized, and we believe that prostitution should also not be legal. There is no such thing as a safe drug, and we won't tell our children that it is okay to use them. We support the role of parents in the upbringing of their children. Conservatives believe that when it comes to raising families, parents are the experts, not the government. Our government has helped Canadian families wherever possible. For example, we've increased the child care benefit for children under 6 and extended it for those up to age 17. We have also introduced a wide range of initiatives to ensure that the economic freedom and prosperity of all Canadians. We have reduced the federal portion of the HST from 7% to 5%. We asked the government of Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne to do the same. They refused. We have lowered the lowest personal tax rate to 15%, and we have introduced pension income splitting for seniors and income splitting for families. Since the recession, Mississauga received more funding from the federal government than any other city in Canada for infrastructure. As the only Conservative MP before 2011, I am proud that I was able to get support for projects like roads and bridges, water and sewer mains, community centers, pools and libraries, the new Celebration Square, Go Transit, Mississauga Transit, and many more. In these times of economic uncertainty, we should not be handing the management of the economy to inexperienced leaders. I've had the privilege of helping many Mississauga residents at my office while serving as your Member of Parliament, and I hope I can count on your support on Election Day on October 19. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Dechert. We'll now go to Ms. Khalid from the Liberal Party of Canada.
Thank you very much for having me here today. My name is Iqra Khalid, and I'm honored to be the Liberal Party candidate in the Mississauga-Erin Mills riding, which has been my home for over a decade. Our riding reflects a world with diverse groups of communities. This is one of our many strengths. We are strong because of our differences, not in spite of them. Every year, we pay taxes to our federal government to fund a system of governance that is intended to make our lives better. This is our investment in our country. Canada right now needs job creation, infrastructure investment, and investment in our middle class. We need a system that is there for us and provides fair treatment. The decisions that our government makes affect us all. These decisions should take into account what the real needs of Canadians are. As a young professional, I will represent the future of our country and speak to the issues that Canadians face today. Our plan is about fairness and building a better country for hardworking Canadians as our parents and grandparents did before us. My family runs a small business in our riding, and we reflect Canadians. We reflect our middle class. With my training as a lawyer, I will help draft laws that make sense to us and that reflect our needs. Legislation that is based on sound data and not politics of division. I graduated from York University and managed an immigration firm prior to attending law school. Having served the community for the last 3 years in the Legal Services Division of the City of Mississauga, I have gained a solid understanding of the issues that our residents face. My experience has focused my vision, which I will use to represent our community. The Liberal Party of Canada is inclusive, and it has a real plan for change. I care about the decisions that affect our families and the people around us, and I look forward to discussing those with you today.
We look forward to it as well. Thank you, Ms. Khalid. We'll now move to the question part of our program, and I'll start with Carol Kataka with the first question.
Thank you, Peter. The economy is a critical topic in every election, and this one is no different. It's a hot topic here for sure. We hear many sound bites about the eroding middle class, and we see that playing out in our community here. In 1980, 2% of our neighborhoods across the region were considered low income, and now 45% of our neighborhoods would fall into the classification of low income. According to the report by the National Council of Welfare, poverty costs taxpayers more than $24 billion a year. I'll start off with the Conservative candidate and ask if you could tell me if you would commit to developing a national poverty reduction strategy, and if so, what would that include?
Sure, our poverty reduction strategy is jobs for people, quality jobs, full-time quality jobs with benefits. Canada has the best job creation record in the G7 countries at over 1.3 million net new jobs since the global recession in 2009. Those are 90% in full-time with benefits in the private sector and high-paying industries. So that's number one. Our plan is to keep taxes low on people. We lowered the lowest marginal tax rate, which took over 1 million low-income Canadians right off the tax rolls altogether. And we reduced the GST portion of the HST from 7 to 5%, which is very important because it's regressive on low-income people, and it saves low-income people thousands of dollars a year. Affordable housing is important, and I'm very proud of the fact that our government is the first government in 25 years to put money into affordable housing. Right here in Mississauga, you can go to the corner of Credit View and Eglinton and see the Credit Vale building. I know, Carol, you're familiar with it. Beautiful building. There are actually 2 buildings there with over 150 suites for low-income and disabled people. It's fully occupied. That's a project I'm proud of. That's a project that I was involved in. We worked cooperatively with all levels of government and the region of Peel, and we got it done. We're doing things to help people right here in Peel.
Thank you. Ms. Khalid.
Thank you. Now, economy is a very, very key part of how our city will sustain itself for time to come, for today and for tomorrow. And we need to ensure that we have a sustainable plan that not only speaks to our middle class, but also those that are working very hard to come up to it. And affordable housing is a very key issue. And as Mr. Dechert has suggested, it is something that we need to work on. But it is not something that we can just, on a one-off basis, dump into our city. We need to have a serious plan that talks about planning, that talks about development, and that talks about maintenance. We need collaboration with our province, with our municipalities, to ensure that we all work together and tackle serious issues such as poverty and making sure that we are up to living standards here in Mississauga. Mr. Dechert here talked about the Credit Vales building, and I believe that that was at a time when it was a minority government for the Conservatives, and there was a lot of lobbying by other parties, I'm sure, to make such projects happen. And since we've had a Conservative majority, unfortunately, we've seen a trickle down of investment in infrastructure in Mississauga.
Thank you, Ms. Bilek from the NDP.
Thank you. Poverty reduction is it's an overarching umbrella sort of idea, but deals with many different issues. Poverty reduction encompasses increasing minimum wage, EI protection, improving CPP, housing, food safety, affordable childcare, and affordable, reliable transportation. All of these are a necessity with respects to reducing poverty throughout Peel Region. We were focusing on affordable housing, and when our cities and our mayors, they speak about the essentials moving forward for all of their cities. They talk about three things, and one of the three things is a need for more affordable housing. We know that 1 in 9 Canadians actually are in need of housing. They struggle either paying for their housing or they are homeless. On any given night, 35,000 Canadians are actually homeless. And over the last 25 years, the Liberals and Conservatives have really cut back on the investment to public housing. Actually, it's fallen by 46%. The Liberals actually started downloading, and it is actually true that the OECD says that we're the only country that doesn't have a national housing strategy.
And thank you, Ms. Bilek. We'll go to a rebuttal to Mr. Dechert, if he chooses.
Thanks, Peter. I just want to respond to my colleague, the Liberal candidate, who mentioned that the Credit Vale building was perhaps a special case. In fact, she'll recall in the 1990s when the Liberal government of Mr. Chrétien and Mr. Martin had huge surplus that they spent not one penny on affordable housing anywhere in Canada. They had $14, $15 billion surpluses. They were taking more money out of people's pockets than they needed to run the government, but they didn't spend any money at all on affordable housing. The last government that did spend money on social housing was the government of Prime Minister Mulroney. Also during that period, the government of Canada made unprecedented investments in co-op buildings. Every co-op building in Mississauga got money for maintenance, for new HVAC systems, new doors and windows to make them more efficient, and general maintenance. That's been done. That's continuing on. In addition, our government has a program called the Housing First program, which is operated by the Ministry of Social Development, and it is getting high marks around the world as being a leader in creating new housing for those who need it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Bilek.
I just wanted to add that the NDP will instill an Affordable Housing Act that will partner with municipalities, provinces, and First Nations to restore long-term stable investment in affordable housing, and will make housing more affordable in our communities by sustaining investment in the affordable housing agreements that actually are out there. And we'll renew cooperative housing agreements and invest in over $2 billion in co-ops and social housing by 2020. So we do have a plan for sustainable long-term funding for affordable housing that will actually affect every single citizen in every city.
All right, Ms. Khalid.
I think we should go back to your original question, which talks about the measures that we should all undertake in order to reduce poverty, and affordable housing may be one of those, but there are other aspects to it, such as providing for social infrastructure that is very much needed for our community that is trying to come up and meet the middle class. And such, the Liberal Party has committed in our 3-point economic plan to provide for funding, which includes social housing, but it also includes childcare. By providing more money in the pockets of Canadians based on a needs analysis, we will be able to bring out 315,000 children out of poverty. 9 out of 10 families under the Liberal Party's plan for childcare will get more.
Thank you, Ms. Bilek. Briefly.
I just wanted to mention that I did at the top, when I first started talking, I talked about poverty reduction as a strategy, and it does encompass, again, increasing minimum wage. We have to look at, the increasing number of seniors in poverty, and the NDP has a plan to top up CPP and GIS so that we can get 200,000 seniors out of poverty. Again, affordable childcare, the NDP would like to bring forth a national childcare program where parents would only be paying $15 a day. And again, we have to focus on food security as well, ensuring that every single citizen in our community has access to good, healthy food available.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. It'll be a real easy one, or a real quick one, I should say, rather. What's your party's position on increasing or decreasing corporate taxes? We'll start with Ms. Khalid.
Corporations and businesses in general are a strong part, or are a vital part of our economy, and we need to ensure that we do have a sustainable position on how to increase our business, especially in growing cities such as Mississauga, which is one of the 6th largest city, which is the 6th largest city in Canada. Corporations, at this point in time, yes, we've had tax cuts on corporations, but in today's economy, we need to make sure that our corporations are part of the stimulation that we really desperately need at this point in time to really revitalize our economy, and providing incentives for our corporations for job creation, for building what our community should look like in the future. The Governor General of the Bank of Canada stated that we have about 35% of Canadian wealth on which corporations are sitting on. We need to find incentives that will move that wealth through the economy, that will move that wealth through the hands of Canadians so that we can stimulate our economy.
Would you suggest a tax on what Governor Carney called dead money as an incentive? Is that just to be clear?
Incentives would be things like hiring more youth, or providing tax credits for hiring youth so that we have a more circulation of funds.
Okay. Mr. Dechert.
Well, thank you, Peter. Yeah, you know what, one of the things I'm most proud of from our track record of government is that we have the lowest taxes on business, on employers, and on people in 50 years. Over 25 years, I was a commercial lawyer. I saw thousands of jobs of my client companies leave Canada because the tax rates were too high. We've reversed that trend, and we're seeing lots of jobs flow back into Canada. We lowered the large corporations tax rate to 15%. Mr. Mulcair didn't know what that number was. We've lowered the small business tax rate to 11% and increased the amount on which it applies to $500,000 from previously $250,000. Most Canadians work for small businesses. 80% of Canadians work for small businesses. Many people here in Mississauga operate those businesses. We're making it easier for them to operate the business and create jobs. This is very, very important. We need to continue to stimulate companies to make investments in Canada. That's why we brought in the most generous capital cost allowance, accelerated capital cost allowance policy in 50 years. That's encouraging Canadian companies to make investments in new planting equipment to make our companies more productive, more efficient. We've extended and made it permanent, and we were the first government to do that. We're getting the job done. We now have lower tax rates both on people and on employers than New York State, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Illinois, California. These are the places that we're competing with for jobs every day, and we're winning those jobs, and we're bringing them to Canada.
Thank you, Ms. Bilek.
Yes, the NDP will be raising corporate taxes. The reason why that we will be doing this is that we really do believe that the corporations need to pay their fair share. As it is right now, we actually have the lowest corporate tax rate out of all the G8 nations in Ontario, we have the lowest corporate taxes out of the Great Lakes region. Yes, Mr. Carney did reflect on the fact that many corporations are sitting on dead money. They're not redistributing their wealth to their employees by paying them fair wages, or to their communities to build and grow. When you talk to corporations, the top 10 reasons why they want to find a location and invest in a location is not because of low corporate tax rates. Actually, what brings companies to Canada is really high-skilled, highly educated workforce. That's number one. Lower corporate tax rates isn't even in the top 10 reasons why corporations will come and invest in a country at all. So that's why we're going to be, ensuring that the corporations, they pay their fair share, and that we can invest the money into long-term sustainable programs and services for all Canadians.
Thank you. Mr. Dechert, did you want to weigh back in on that?
I would actually.
Sure.
Obviously, my NDP colleague has not read the KPMG study in 2014, which compared Canada to 25 nations around the world and said Canada was actually the best country in the world in which to do business. And the first thing they cited on that list was low taxes. The second thing was low healthcare costs on employers. The third thing was low land costs. And the fourth thing was a highly educated workforce. We're winning these competitions because we've put in place a very competitive tax plan for Canada. That is a very, very important thing. I can tell you, I practiced for many years as a tax lawyer, and taxes are one of the very first things that any CFO will look at when determining where to create new jobs.
Ms. Khalid, briefly.
Speaking of jobs that we have talked about when talking about corporations and taxes, what jobs? Like, having knocked on doors in our riding, there's one issue that keeps on arising. It is the lack of jobs in cities like Mississauga. We are sitting at an unemployment rate of 9% here in Mississauga, 13% for our youth. We really need to provide those incentives for businesses to create more innovative ways in which we can have more jobs. We not only that need to further invest in making sure that people are able to get to their jobs. We know that infrastructure and public transit is a problem. Mississauga-Erin Mills is a little landlocked. We have trouble getting out of our city. We need to be mobile, and providing that infrastructure as a government and working in collaboration with our province and our municipality to ensure that that happens is a way to go, along with working with corporations for incentives.
Thank you, Ms. Bilek. Briefly, we'll move to Carol for the next
question. I just briefly also want to mention that the NDP will be lowering taxes for small and medium-sized businesses, as they are really essentially the employment providers for almost 80% of Canadians.
Maybe that I misphrased the question. I probably should have said business tax instead of corporate tax, but we'll move on to Carol for her question.
Okay, I'd like to build a little bit on the conversation we began around jobs and around the issue of precarious employment. About 40% of the labor market in Peel is precariously employed. Through changing economic conditions, many people have lost good-paying full-time jobs and replaced them with contract or several part-time positions to try to make up that money. These positions offer no benefits, no retirement savings, and have no commitment to the employee. So what would your policies and your party put in place to address precarious employment? And I'm going to start with our NDP candidate.
Sure. We know that Canadians are working harder than ever, and decent wages will affect not only Canada socially, but as well as economically. The NDP would like to reinstate the federal minimum wage, and that's to $15 an hour, that the Liberals previously cut. The $15 minimum wage federally will provide strong leadership and improve our economy worldwide. It'll raise the bar with respect to putting pressure on the provinces, and we'll work with the provinces to reach goals of increasing minimum wages throughout the provinces. When people get paid a livable wage or an increased minimum wage, they will have the opportunity to live more healthy, more active, more fulfilled lives, because they'll be able not only to contribute and spend, which of course ideally will fuel the economy, but they take a large burden off our healthcare system.
And thank you for that.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. We'll move on to Mr. Dechert.
Well, thanks, Peter. Well, the key, I believe, is to make sure that our workforce has the skills they need for the jobs that are available. There are jobs available, and we have found that in many cases we have not educated our young people and others looking for work and given them the skills they need to actually get those jobs. So, for example, I'm very proud of the fact that under the Knowledge Infrastructure Fund, our government provided the seed capital money for the new campus of Sheridan College at the city centre. It's a beautiful campus, and Jeff Zabutsky, the president of Sheridan College, will tell you that that would not have been possible without the seed money of $15 million under the Knowledge Infrastructure Program provided by the federal government. They built the first phase, which was 1,300 students a year. They're building the second phase now and are already planning the third phase. All that came from the Knowledge Infrastructure Fund. At the University of Toronto, Mississauga, we provided money for the building of the new instructional center, which has classrooms, laboratories, workspaces, the largest lecture hall in all of UTM. That's providing skills training to the people of this area. We've also brought in something called the apprenticeship program, grant program, where people who apply for apprenticeship training in any of the skilled trades get $2,000 when they start, $2,000 when they finish. Deductibility of their tools. There's incentive for employers to hire them. And we also brought in something called the Canada Job Grant, which gives employers $15,000.
We'll let you get to that on your next turnaround.
Thank you.
We'll go to Ms. Khalid.
Yep, thanks.
Sure. Thank you. So just speaking to the NDP candidate and her point of having $15 a minimum wage. Now, we must understand that there is fine print that's attached to that. That does not apply to all federal employees. In fact, it only applies to a very small number of regulated industries at the federal level. Secondly, speaking to the KIP program, which is great, you know, investment into our city is always a good thing. But we also need to understand that the Conservative government unfortunately slashed our Canada Youth Summers program, which employed 55,000 summer students, and that is something that our youth are missing. We no longer have that program, and that's something that we need to work on in terms of keeping our city employed. And one way that the Liberal government proposes to have that is to create jobs by investing in our city, by investing in our country, and by investing in infrastructure, by putting in $60 billion in new funding over the next 10 years. And that jobs plan is about doing for our kids and what our parents did for us.
Thank you, Ms. Khalid. We'll go to Ms. Bilek from the NDP.
Thank you, thank you. $15 federal minimum wage it's a federal policy. It's a policy that will essentially set the bar for all provinces to follow suit and start raising the minimum wage within their provinces to ensure that Canadians have the ability to live a happy and successful life, as well as contribute back to the economy. You know, we have 200,000 more Canadians are more jobless now than before the last recession. The quality of jobs in Canada is at a 25-year low. More part-time jobs, lower wages, fewer benefits. This is precarious work. This is the face of employment in Canada that we're seeing moving forward. We need to finally create a policy, have a government that's willing to put policy in place to benefit Canadians, to get us out of this precarious employment down spiral, and actually, you know, give Canadians what they deserve, and that's a way to live a dignified and happy life, and that's with increasing the minimum wage.
And we'll go briefly to Mr. Dechert.
Well, thanks, Peter. First of all, my Liberal colleague is right. The federal minimum wage applies to almost nobody in Mississauga, so to bring that up is kind of a red herring. But I don't want people to have a minimum wage job. I want them to have a high wage job. What we found is years ago, companies would train people. They got out of the habit of doing that. That's why our government brought in the Canada Jobs program, which provides $15,000 to the employer to hire a new person and train them for the job. That's been very successful. We have companies right here in Mississauga like Indol Technologies, Honeywell, Ford in Oakville, Pratt & Whitney near the airport. These have all received support from the federal government. they're expanding their workforces, they're hiring new people, and they're building really high-value technology that's going to be sold around the world. Those are high, much greater than minimum wage jobs. That's what we need here in Mississauga.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to the next question. It's regarding infrastructure and transportation infrastructure. We know that it's costing our region gridlock that is in excess of $6 billion a year. The province has stepped up to fund the Huron-Ontario LRT, but there's still a great need in Mississauga to move people to and from work and school and whatnot. I'm just wondering what your government, or the role of your government, should any of you become government, would be to fund transportation infrastructure in our community. We'll start with Mr. Dechert.
Well, thanks, Peter. That's a great question. Transportation certainly is the #1 issue in the GTA, and I'm really proud of the fact that our government has made unprecedented investments in transportation right here in Mississauga. We brought in new funding for GO Transit, $250 million under our program from the federal government, was matched by another $250 million from the provincial government, for a total of $500 million. Parking structures at almost every GO station in the GTA, including right here at Arundel, which I'm very proud of, Clarkson, and also at the Cooksville stations. The one in Arundel is 2,200 new parking spaces. That's 2,200 less cars on the road just from that one GO station every year, or every day. When I went there a few years ago, people would say, you know, Bob, if I can't get here by 7:30 in the morning, I can't take the GO train. I have to drive to work. Defeats the purpose. We fixed that problem. We've invested $83 million into the bus rapid transit way along the 403 corridor. When that's complete, you'll be able to take a bus from Winston Churchill to the TTC at Kipling Station in 17 minutes on an express bus. When people start using that transit system more, we can simply lay a railway track on that road surface, and then we have a train system. That's very efficient. In addition, we gave the city money under the gas tax refund, which they used to buy 120 new buses.
We'll do the second round for that
and
one.
I'm proud of that as well. Thank you.
I know. I'm glad to see everyone's excited to weigh in, but we'll go to Ms. Khalid.
Thank you. So as everybody agrees, I think in this room, infrastructure and especially transit is a key issue for a city like Mississauga, the 6th largest city in the world that can't afford to be landlocked, that really needs to be mobile. And you know, like it's great that we've had investments coming forward, but in reality, the announcements that have been made recently by the Conservative government were that these cities like Mississauga can apply for up to a stated amount with no funding available before 2017. And unlike the traditional infrastructure projects that Mr. Dechert talked about, the funding would be evenly split over the useful life of the transit system, which is 30 to 40 years. We need investments now. I think that with those investments in infrastructure and public transit, is the way to stimulate what we are looking at right now, which is a stagnated city, which is a stagnated country. We need to mobilize. We need to really create that stimulus. And the Liberal Party's very committed to working with our province and our municipalities to make sure that we collaborate, not only just to build a project, but to plan and develop and maintain and develop a system for that.
And thank you, Ms. Bilek.
The Canadian municipal infrastructure deficit is actually a staggering $172 billion, and it's rising. The Conservatives' transit plan is really too little, and their plan will not give a single dollar to transit until 2018. The Liberal plan relies actually on a P3 model. Instead of offering stable funding, they'll leave towns and cities to compete for investment with big pension funds. The NDP plan is to ensure that road, bridges, and vital infrastructure is there when we need it. We'll start with an equivalent of 1 additional cent of the existing gas tax. We'll also add additional $1.5 billion at the end of the first mandate to reach $3.7 billion annually in stable long-term investment in core infrastructure. Tom Mulcair and the NDP have a better transit plan. We developed it in collaboration with and partnerships with the provinces and the territories. And again, we'll provide $1.3 billion annually in predictable, stable, long-term, transparent public transit investment over the next 20 years.
And thank you. We'll now go to Carol for the next question.
Thank you, Peter. I'd like to change a little bit the conversation around a more quality of life and well-being as we look at the members of our community and our residents and their experience. Mental illness is the second leading cause of disability and premature death. 1 in 5 Canadians will experience mental illness in their lifetime. 70% of those will experience it in childhood and adolescence. Our community has very little access to mental health services. Our population growth has long exceeded the system's capacity to support the individuals who need support. And mental health impacts a person's ability to earn, support a family, and to engage in the community overall. And I will start off this question to the Liberal candidate. Can you please walk us through your party's commitment to champion a national mental health strategy which both increases access to services and reduces stigma?
Thank you for that question, Carol. So I think that one thing that we always need to keep in mind is that as Canada and the federal government, we need to make sure that we are working with our province and our municipalities to come up with that more fulsome plan to target issues that should have quality of life, and mental health is one of them. Liberal government will prioritize working with our provinces and territories and municipalities and our Indigenous peoples to prevent mental illness. We expand access to care and recovery services and support, and combat the stigma of mental illness. I think 1 in 5 Canadians will experience mental health issues in their lifetime, and with a cost to the economy in excess of $50 billion. So this is something that is vital and crucial that we need to address today, and it can only be addressed through collaboration and building a plan with our province and our municipalities.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bilek.
Mental health is an issue that faces, it's impacted by most Canadians, either personally or someone they know. It's a healthcare issue that we, again, are struggling to find means to work on, to service, to eradicate. We do need to make an improvement by making healthcare better, and it does take a national approach. We do need to ensure that we do focus on mental health as being one of the main targets in improvements to our healthcare with the provinces. It's one of our top priorities, and in addition to improving various other forms of primary care given to our citizens.
Thank you, Ms. Bilek. Mr. Dechert.
Well, thanks, Peter and Carol. Mental illness obviously is a significant issue in our society. First of all, we've been increasing our healthcare transfers to the provinces by 6% every year. That's 3 times the rate of inflation. They've been getting an increase of at least 4% in real dollars every year, and we've been asking them to use that specifically to target the issue of mental health. It's an issue that impacts our justice system, and it's an issue that impacts people's ability to work and live profitable and quality lives in our community. We've put unprecedented amounts of money into research, into mental illness and the ways to treat mental illness. We have increased charitable tax credits so people can through their own generosity, contribute to the various organizations such as the Bell Talk First effort to talk about mental health and to coordinate research and funding for mental health therapies. In the veterans field, which we're responsible for, we've increased the number of offices for mental health assistance to our veterans to 26 and hired 400 mental health professionals to help those with PTSD who have fought in our armed forces. And we have also provided money through the RCMP and other police forces for police training. Chief Jennifer Evans right here in Peel Region tells me that a lot of her officers spend a great deal of their time every day dealing with people with mental illness. We need to get them the proper training so they know how to recognize mental illness and help people with it.
And thank you, Ms. Khalid.
I'd actually like to address that we do have vulnerable groups that are more prone to mental health issues. And one, as my friend Mr. Dechert here addressed, is our veterans. And our Veterans Affairs, it let $1.1 billion in funding lapse while much needed mental health services to veterans was not delivered. I think we need to do a lot more. We've had so many centers closed down for veterans. Did you know that more veterans have died post-Afghanistan than they actually died in Afghanistan? This is a serious problem, and unfortunately we haven't seen much serious action by our current federal government for it.
I'm going to give Ms. Dechert an opportunity to weigh in on that if you choose.
Absolutely. In fact, those facts are incorrect. We've increased the funding for veterans by 35%. There was an issue with post-traumatic stress syndrome, which festered for many years under the previous Liberal administration. The military wouldn't even acknowledge that the issue existed back in their day. We have increased the number of offices to deal specifically with post-traumatic stress. As I mentioned earlier, from 17 to 26 across the country. We've hired 400 mental health professionals, and we have actually more mental health professionals working for the Canadian military on a per capita basis than any other NATO mission. So I would ask my Liberal colleague to look into that. Thank you.
Okay. And we're going to look into another question at this point, and that would be regarding employment, immigration, and integration. As we know, living in Mississauga, immigrants face a tough challenge when they first come to a new country. One of the biggest challenges, of course, is finding employment. What are your plans to ensure that immigrants who come to Canada will find employment? And I'll go to Ms. Bilek to start off with.
So one of the main sort of barriers for newcomers to find employment in Canada is the slow process of recognition of foreign credentials. It's still a top barrier for employment for new Canadians, and faced with immigration backlogs by the Liberal government and now the Conservatives, who've actually deleted many applications. We've had an increase instead of numbers of temporary workers, and we've lost our focus of ensuring that newcomers to Canada have the ability to find work in their fields based on their highly skilled and highly educated background. And we've got to move forward and make it easier for all newcomers to ensure that their credentials are met, even possibly before or just when they get here into Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Dechert.
Thanks, Peter. In fact, last year, more than 280,000 new Canadians came to Canada. That's the largest number in our country's history. We are the largest new immigrant intake country in the world by far on a per capita basis, much greater than the United States, Australia, New Zealand, or any of the other large intake countries. We created something called the Foreign Credential Recognition Office, which was specifically designed to focus on people who come with professional qualifications from overseas. They can now, before they come to Canada, log on to this website, send them their credentials and their experience, and they will get good advice on what, if any, additional courses they need to take, where they can get them in their home country or online, what additional things they need to do in order to be fully qualified the day they come to Canada. In addition to, for the people who are already here or having this problem, we're bringing all of the professional bodies together. There are actually 440 separate professional qualification bodies across Canada. They're regulated at the provincial level. I'm a member of the law profession, and we stand firmly against any rule that the Law Society of Canada might bring forward to limit the number of lawyers in Ontario, which is simply designed to protect the economic market. That's not right. If it's about protection of the public safety, engineering standards, that we agree with, but we don't agree with other kinds of protection.
Ms. Khalid, you're a lawyer as well.
I am indeed. Thank you. Thank you for that question. You know what? Canada is based on immigration. Everybody here, you know, at some point in their lives or the lives of previous generations have immigrated to Canada, save and apart from the Aboriginals. And what we are proud of is that we are a mosaic. We maintain our dual identities, and but we do need that support from our government for integration. And I have the unique experience of not only having gone through the settlement process with my parents when we first moved to Canada, but also because I obtained my law degree from Michigan, I had to go through the whole accreditation program again later on in my life. And I will tell you, it is not easy. As a person who, for one, don't have any children, but if somebody with children or with a bigger family is coming into the country and trying to get their accreditation, trying to work in the field that they are trained in, it's near impossible. The accreditation exams themselves are so expensive, and unfortunately, I didn't have you know, a lot of access to that accreditation system. It was a learn-as-you-go kind of process. It's something that we do need to maintain offshore. Something that's when people are coming to Canada, they're job ready. They have their credentials recognized, and they're ready to come to Canada and work.
Perfect, and thank you. And we'll go to Ms. Bilek quickly.
So immigration does help us grow our economy. It fosters innovation, it increases trade, and more than that, it is part of who we are as a country. And having slow foreign credential recognition, it remains a top barrier to employment for all new Canadians, as I stated before. Just to be clear, the NDP government will indeed restore the $30 million to the Foreign Credential Recognition Program. That program, Stephen Harper did promise, but he did fail to deliver it. We'll also offer grants to professional bodies to develop a harmonized national standard for credential recognition. We'll also create an immigration ombudsman to fairly investigate problems and resolve complaints. And we'll expand programs that prepare new immigrants for success before they arrive in Canada, like orientations in visa offices. These are many of the things that the NDP wants to implement to ensure that newcomers have their credentials matched.
Ms. Khalid, do you want to weigh in on something?
Yes, I think that it's not just about the immigration and coming to Canada. I think once a family or a person has come to Canada, we need to provide measures for actual integration into Canadian society. And part of that is, you know, you can have all the credentials that are recognized here in Canada, but with the lack of actual jobs, where would we go? We need to make sure that we have a fulsome approach to not just integrating or providing those services, but we also need to have a transition and an integration into Canada by having access to the kinds of jobs that our skilled workers are coming in for.
Thank you. Mr. Dechert?
Sure. There's one other thing I want to point out, Peter. It's very important. We've also provided student loans for new Canadians who are actually here already, who need to take an additional course or two to bring their qualifications level up to Canadian standards. That's very important. That addresses the people who are already here. The previous government didn't tell people. They said, great, you're a doctor, you're an engineer, you're a nurse, come to Canada. But they didn't actually say you might have to do some more courses. You might have to get some different experience before you can actually practice your chosen profession here in Canada. We've addressed that through the Foreign Credential Profession Recognition Office, and we've also provided loans so that if they're already here, they can go back to school, because many people told us, well, I'm here now, I'm supporting my family, I've got some kind of a job, but I can't afford to take time off work and go back to school to get that extra course or two. We fixed that problem by providing the student loans so they can do that. That's very important.
Right, Ms. Khalid, briefly, and we'll move on to Carol.
Sure. And when I talked about integration earlier, you know, we talk about coming to Canada and establishing a home here. We need to make sure that our Canadian identity is preserved. And unfortunately, with the current bill of C-24 that creates that second class of citizen, I'm not really sure if people you know, have a lot of value for what it means to be a Canadian and what that integration means, you know, for lives here in Canada. It's all well and good to provide for accreditation and such, but having that core respect for Canadians, even if they are born or their parents were born from another country, we need to make sure that we're not disrespecting them by taking away or having the powers to revoke their citizenship once they've integrated into our country.
Okay, so we'll move on to Carol for her next question.
Okay, I'll begin with the Conservative candidate. It's about innovation and R&D. A healthy economy depends on pro-innovation policy environment. And I wondered if you could walk us through how your party will create an innovative business environment in the future.
Sure, that's a great question. First of all, our government has made unprecedented investments in university and college research. Universities do pure research, colleges often do applied research, and they're providing through our Minister of Science and Technology significant funding. Recently we announced $15 million for cancer research at UTM at their new medical school. Sheridan College is receiving applied engineering research in their technology program. We also have something called the Automotive Innovation Fund, which is $500 million, which is provided to companies primarily based in Ontario that develop new automotive technology to make cars faster, more efficient, lighter, safer, that sort of thing. We have something called the Strategic Aerospace Defense Initiative, which is primarily focused on companies in Ontario and Quebec, and that's $2 billion. One of those companies is Pratt & Whitney, located here in Mississauga, which has hired 300 new engineers to develop a new gas turbine jet engine, which is more efficient. These are some of the ways we're doing that. We gave companies the accelerated capital cost allowance, which allows them to buy the latest technology to make their businesses more efficient and train their workers on how to use it.
And thank you. We'll move to Ms.
Sure.
Khalid, and the question was on creating an environment of innovation.
Thank you very much for that. Now I will speak to our policy of the current Harper government to muzzle our scientists, which has a significant impact for Canada and Canadian research. Now, according to the CBC, hundreds of federal scientists said in a survey that they have been asked to exclude or alter technical information in government documents for non-scientific reasons, and thousands said that they had been prevented from responding to the media or the public. Now, having policies such as this inhibit and really stop innovation and stop progress, and that's something that we really need to tackle. Secondly, the long-form census it's a way of collecting data and information on which we can progress and which we can come up with innovative solutions to our country and our current problems that we face today. And the canceling of the long-form census has left us a little bit in the dark, unfortunately. You know, without sound data, we can't really make good decisions or, you know, insightful decisions.
And Ms. Bilek, do you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. Innovation needs research and development, but it also needs the innovative project needs to be commercialized as well. We need to actually focus on all three stages. So the innovative idea, the research and development behind it, as well as investing in commercialization. Canada does need a prime minister, a leader who will champion this on the world stage. You know, we have the most highly skilled and educated individuals in the world living here in Canada. We have the ability to move our economy from an oil and gas-based natural resource extraction economy to an economy where we're investing in a diversified economy, improving and making innovations in aerospace technology, clean technology. We could be the leaders in the world of exporting clean technology, biodiesel, energy, infrastructure, industrial products, processes, transportation, recycling, ensuring that our clean water remains clean.
And thank you. And thank you. I'm going to just take off something that Ms. Khalid had mentioned regarding the long-form census. The Ontario Chamber of Commerce raised a concern that the loss of the long-form census has resulted in a loss of comparable longitudinal data that seriously impacts our ability to measure and track market change, labor market research, for example, and the effectiveness of economic policies. Will you commit to reinstating the long-form census, or are there other data collection tools that are available that we can make sure that we get that very critical labor market data and data that will help us form an economic policy? And I can start with Mr. Dechert.
Thanks, Peter. That's a good question. In fact, you're right. There are more effective tools for collecting this information. There are various kinds of polling and marketing research techniques. In fact, did you know that most of the countries of Europe have done away with their census organizations a long time ago? Because that census data is collected over a year. It takes a year or more to analyze, and by the time it's released to the public for use by businesses or by governments, it's very stale dated data. What we need to do is collect data that's time sensitive. There are many marketing research companies that do that. That's the way to do it. Find out what you need, get it done immediately, and no, we're not going to send people to jail for not telling the government how many bathrooms they have or what religion they practice.
Great, thank you very much. Ms. Khalid, and we'll go to Ms. Bilek, and we'll wrap this question and answer part.
The Liberal Party is committed to having sound data to back up or that feed into the decisions that we make as a government, and the long-form census is part of that sound data that will inform our decisions going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Bilek.
So in the summer of 2010, the federal government quietly set out a press release announcing its decision to eliminate the Canadian long-term census. And to its surprise, many groups, business leaders, healthcare professionals, community groups, academics, religious leaders, and provincial governments spoke in support of bringing back the long-term census. And why? Because it's the gold standard for vital information about our neighborhoods, our cities, our towns, our country. It's chock full of important information about the diversity in our communities, our immigration histories, our family households, our work, our income, our education background. And essentially what our businesses, our
And thank you, Ms.
communities
Bilek.
need
I
in
don't
order
mean to
move
interrupt, but
forward
we're
to
at the
create
end of our
policy.
show, so otherwise I would have given you a little more leeway, but we're at the end of the time for questions. So what we will do is go directly into closing remarks, and we'll do it in the opposite direction, 1 minute each candidate, then we started. Ms. Khalid.
Thank you very much. I must say it's been a pleasure to be here today. So I'm a proud Liberal candidate, and that's because the Liberal Party is fighting for the middle class. A return to basic Canadian values of freedom of speech, of social justice, of support for our veterans, of a willingness to work with the provinces and protection of the environment. The Liberal Party is the only party willing to do the right thing and invest in jobs and infrastructure to grow our economy and to get us back on track, not to play to fears. The Liberal Party has a record of being open to those in need, the party that brought us the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that opened doors to immigration. We were proud to be Canadian, and we were known as peacekeepers in the world, and I want to regain that pride. I stand with Liberal values, Canadian values, and I urge you to think of the Canada that you want, the real change that you want, and the best party for that is the Liberal Party of Canada. On October 19th, vote for real change. Vote for Iqra Khalid.
Thank you, Ms. Khalid. Mr. Dechert.
Thanks, Peter. I'd like to thank Rogers TV and the Mississauga Board of Trade for sponsoring this important opportunity for the residents of Mississauga and for all of us as candidates. Friends, as I meet with Mississauga residents across my riding, I am often asked why I became involved in politics. For me, the answer is easy. I became involved in politics because I wanted to give back to our great country and this community which has done so much for me, and also to help people wherever and whenever possible. I am proud of our government's record of helping families, especially the increased support under the Universal Child Care Benefit. I am proud to be a part of our government that supports family values and opposes the legalization of marijuana and prostitution. I am proud that Canada now has one of the most fair and generous immigration systems in the world. And I am proud of the economic record of our Conservative government, and I know that we will continue to provide the kind of economic leadership that Canada needs in these uncertain times. We will keep Canada's economy strong and focused. But the thing I am most proud of is representing the residents of Mississauga-Erin Mills in the Parliament of Canada. It has been a great privilege and honor to do so, and I'm asking for your support to re-elect me as your Member of Parliament so that I can continue to represent you in the Parliament of Canada.
And thank you. We'll go directly to Ms. Bilek.
This election is about change. After 148 years of back-to-back Conservative and Liberal governments, many promises have been made and many promises have been broken, and both cannot be trusted any longer. If you want to replace Stephen Harper and the Conservatives, vote strategically for the NDP. The NDP is the official opposition and your strategic choice to vote for in this election. We have over 100 experienced members of Parliament who are ready to govern. We have an experienced and principled leader in Tom Mulcair. On the other hand, the Liberals only have 27 seats. They would need to elect an additional 140 new and experienced candidates to form government, which is highly unlikely. And Justin Trudeau is really not ready to be our Prime Minister. The NDP is your strategic choice to vote for this election here in Erin Mills. Tom Mulcair and the NDP are focused on rebuilding Canada. We'll work together with the provinces and cities to get things done and make a difference in all of the lives of every Canadian. Canadians are ready for change, and in this election, the choice for change is clear. That's why every day, as I'm out going door to door, residents of our community are putting their trust in me, Tom Mulcair, and the NDP to build a stronger, more hopeful Canada.
Thank you. And
I invite you to be part of it.
And I thank you. I would like to thank all of our candidates for participating in this debate. I believe I can speak for all of our viewers when I say that we're much more aware of the issues affecting our community and their nation, as well as the candidates' position on these issues. That concludes our federal candidates debate for Mississauga-Erin Mills. I'd like to thank Rogers TV for being a partner with the Board of Trade, and of course Carol Kataka from the United Way of Region Appeal. Be sure to tune into Rogers TV on election night for complete election coverage. All the coverage starts at 8:30 p.m. on election night, October 19th on Rogers TV. Go out and vote.